Hello friends! Welcome to another video. I hope you're having a fabulous 2019. Mine is going super well. I have finished up my selfie art journal course that was a major bucket list item for me, and that is live on my YouTube channel right now for free, and I hope you'll check it out when you get the chance. But I realized when I finished it that I hadn't done a flip of my November-December art journal or my January one, so I'm going to do that now. So we're going to start over here. This is a Jane Davenport Traveler's Notebook with the cover on it, and that is my 2018 archive of everything that I did last year. So the cool thing about this insert is that it ended exactly on December 31st. So that worked out so awesome. This is a Taroko Designs Tomoe River paper insert, and I have an unpopular journaling opinion, and that is that I don't like Tomoe River paper. Everybody swears by it, and it's great that it's so thin and you can fit a lot in here. But for the way that I journal, it just was not behaving the way that I wanted it to, and my watercolor doesn't behave on it the way that I want it to. And I would go so far as to advise any new watercolorists who may be trying to get into art journaling that if you want to learn watercolor techniques, please do it on different paper, because Tomoe River paper just doesn't let you blend or glaze or do most of the things that watercolor paper will let you do. So that being said, I have a few pages in here that I really like how they turned out, so I look forward to showing you that. I did also decorate my cover to an extent. It's mostly washi tape, and then this photo that I took of my plastic palette. I started on November 9th with this insert. Did a little bit of cutting my Sprocket prints to shape. That was fun. And you can see I continued using that date stamp method that I was in one of my previous videos for quite a while, but I did change that up in here, and I really like what I'm doing now. So you'll see that soon enough. On this spread, this was like the last gasp of my Distress Oxide inks that I was trying to figure out if I still liked, and I didn't. I didn't like how this turned out at all, but that's what you do. You try the art supplies again if they don't click with you the first time, just like I was trying Tomoe River paper again, just to make sure that it wasn't for me, and it wasn't, and neither are Distress Oxides, and that's fine. I also used some Zig Clean Color and a fountain pen with some soft mint ink by Diatramentis for these sketches. I really like this giant tip-in. Again, this is the same photo of my palette. I just printed it on vellum and folded it and taped it right there at the spine. And then this is Daniel Smith watercolor sticks in the background. Sometimes I have a day where I really don't get out of the house and I don't get a chance to even take photos. And on this day in particular, the most interesting thing that happened was we watched Totoro. So I drew that. Same kind of things in here. I made a custom tea blend in a jar, and then this is one of the lights that's in my friend's apartment. She has a collection of Edison bulbs that are really cool. This is a technique I do with my Sprocket prints sometimes, where I will pull them into an app like Diptych, and I'll use one of the funny angled frames, and then after it prints out, I'll cut along that angle in the frame and I'll reconfigure how those two shots fit together. So that makes this print a lot taller, and it makes it fit a lot closer to the edges of my vellum tip-ins that I'm still using. Another experiment with a big tip-in that I had sketched and then printed onto vellum. This is one of the pages that just did not work for me on the Tomoe River paper. I was really hoping to mix these colors together on the paper and get that nice celestial blue that you can get from a combination of phthalo turquoise and quinacridone rose. And instead, the quinacridone rose that I put down first pretty much started drying at the edges and would not budge for me on this paper. So it just created these sort of hypnotic swirls that kind of make my head ache when I look at them. This page, on the other hand, I was really proud of. So I was sick this day, and this is the view of myself sitting on the couch with my blanket on and my laptop on watching YouTube videos. And then for this photo, this is one that came up in my Facebook feed that I hadn't been journaling at the time that I took this. So I thought that was a great opportunity to use that photo in my journal and commemorate that. Gotta make sure I'm not grabbing 2 pages at once. This one felt thicker than normal. This is the 62 GSM Tomoe River paper. And then every time I buy a new brush, I do memorialize that as well. This was the first example of a sketching style that I really came to enjoy in my journal, and I'm using an extra small Faber-Castell Pitt pen to do the outlines. After I put it down in pencil first, I'll go in with the Pitt pen and do the nice fine outlines and then erase that and then come back in with the watercolor. Super simple, super straightforward, and very detailed, and I really liked that sketch a lot. Same thing over here, same process. Also really like this one. On this side, this is from a photo of my great-grandmother back in Germany, and I did a double tip-in on this page because I took a lot of photos on Thanksgiving. And then I tried to sketch her in the background. I was using Bloodstone Genuine watercolor by Daniel Smith, and it granulates, and on the Tomoe River paper it just pooled in very unpredictable ways and didn't behave like I really wanted it to, but I am really pleased with how her face came out. Another thing I do when I don't have anything to paint is I will paint my outfit for the day. I got into a little bit of character design for this spread, and I did paint these on 2 separate days. You can probably tell by the fact that the brush strokes are a little different over here. I was trying something new, but I designed them both on the same day. I was playing a lot of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and these guys are very much inspired by the little Korok creatures that pop up in unexpected places and give you acorns and seeds and things. Another brush I picked up is the Silver Black Velvet. And then I made myself a mini palette using a mint tin, which is one of my favorite ways to make a palette. I tried to switch up my date stamps in here and wasn't really satisfied with those. I really liked the much bigger, more graphical looking fonts instead. So I went right back to those in the next spread. This is a building close to downtown, the old county courthouse that was all lit up for Christmas. So I painted that, and I only realized like 2 days later that I had left the lights off, so I had to go back in with a gel pen and add those. There's my foot after physical therapy. I make no apologies for that. If you watch a lot of art journal videos, eventually you're probably going to see somebody's foot. This was swatching out the core mini half pan set that I really enjoyed and did a review of. And then over here, I sketched the brush that I put together. Half of it is a Faber-Castell water brush with the piston and the push button section in the middle. This part is rigid, and this part is rigid. And the tip came from a Tim Holtz chisel tip water brush. And I also did a little bit of collage or extra tip in with a dry cleaning tag from a sweater that I believe I bought that day to turn into leg warmers. Over here is the fence at my music student's house, complete with Georgia O'Keeffe style skull and another outfit of the day. Every time I think to sketch my violin in my journal, I never have my violin in front of me, so I always attempt these sketches that I don't end up satisfied with because they don't really look like violins. I think this was the day that I sold some of my inks. So I wanted to preserve those in my book. Did a lot of cleaning that day. This is the day that I put together the water system, rinse system for my watercolors to travel with, which I believe is back in my packing video. And I like to mix it up with my selfies occasionally, so I've got one that is my head on a crow's body, and now here is a little crow head that I painted on my body. This was the day that I put our stockings up, and the day that I finally made those leg warmers for a wool sweater. They served me well. So this spread, I didn't have anything to paint, and I pulled out my tarot deck, which is the Ostara Tarot, and I pulled a card each day, and then I painted whatever was on that card, which was a really great exercise, especially for this one over here, just in color and trying to blend and trying to get those muted tones and being light with the paint. And then I went back and for my photographs, I interpreted that card, so 2 of swords and 8 of coins, with my own selfie photographs. So that is a cool way to fill up a spread if I don't have anything to paint or photograph that day. Only thing that happened on this day that was remarkable was I stepped in a puddle. Lots of crows in my journal, still feeding them and making friends. And I got a new white palette that day. Went to a Christmas party. This was the road back from dropping my husband off at the airport. This is that same building downtown, but I liked this angle a lot, and I really liked the green flash in the windows that I tried to capture. And this was a trash truck that I saw that looked very striking against the blue sky, so I took a photo of it to paint later. Inspiration, it comes from everywhere. This is the sweater pattern that we bought for my daughter, the pattern on the sweater. I did not make her a sweater. I'm not that talented. And more crows. Bought an air plant and put it in a little shell. This was a great sketching exercise. This was, I believe, a small Pitt pen in blue over the purple crayon or purple pencil that I usually use for my sketching. So they mixed, the pen sort of sealed the pencil in some places, and it came out more of a bluish purple. And then this was from our trip out to New Mexico. We landed just as the light was going, so I only got a couple of photos that day of New Mexico itself, but I sketched my parents' javelina skull and took some photos on the plane and in the airport. And then these are the pepper lights at my parents' house and Tres Hermanos Mountains. Flight back on Christmas Day. The clouds were really cool and really regular, so I tried to capture how that looked. And then my poor kid and my poor husband both got sick right after Christmas. I managed to avoid it somehow, so I was the one cleaning up after everybody, and it was awful. It was just awful. And then I put 2 days on a page, getting close to the end of the month. These were days that my daughter wasn't back in school yet, and it was difficult for me to journal to the extent that I usually do on a regular school day. Here's the day that I hauled a giant treadmill out of my parents' basement when they weren't even back from New Mexico yet. Cool pattern on a lamp in a cafe where I met a friend of mine. And then the last day is, of course, for the crow on New Year's Eve. So that is it for 2018. I used my last page to test new supplies. It's really fun to wrap up the year in this book. It was great to confirm that there are certain supplies that I don't like the distress inks and the Tomoe River paper, and now I never have to use them again. It was great. And I'm also just really proud of this journal because it went on for a lot longer than a month at a time. This was by far the longest one that I finished in one stretch last year, the longest run uninterrupted of journaling. So overall, a very positive experience, even though I didn't like the paper. Getting into 2019 now. Started to play around again with how I did my dates. So this, I believe, is the Illustrated Faith date stamp with some archival ink. And this sketch in the background is a washi tape sampler that I made for a couple of people in the Little Raven Ink Patreon Facebook group. Didn't have anything to paint today, but I got some cool mail that had some pine cones on it that I cut out and collaged in. And here is where I started with tabs. I got myself a tab cutter. I started using scraps of things that I've printed or things that I've painted, which I have so much spare paint paper just lying around my room, the studio room, and it makes great tabs. They're super bright and colorful. It draws the attention to those dates, and I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do to get the date actually on there. So I'm using metallic ink here. I didn't like how long it took to dry. Archival ink over here, which didn't stand out quite enough for me, especially if this was a different color. It stood out okay on the yellow. I did a lot of KonMariing, so this was a painting of folding my shirt. Same deal here with the tarot page. So I took the card, I painted what was on the card or a zoomed in version of it, again from the Ostara Tarot, and then I interpreted it with my photo. And this was the day that I finished up the pieces, or I finished up the second piece for my selfie art journaling course, and picked up some burnt umber, which was a first to have a pre-mixed non-granulating brown in my palette. So that was exciting. Over here I finished the last piece. Still working with what to do with this. This is paper with a photo of the moon on it, and then a scrap from a magazine. Still trying to figure out how I want to get my dates on here. Picked up some Holbein watercolor, the shell pink and composed green. Composed green? That sounds terrible. So on the 8th, I got myself a Fjallraven Kanken backpack, as well as a couple new water brushes and some Perylene Maroon paint from Winsor Newton. And then this sketch was just from reference on the internet. I had been watching a lot of Killing Eve, and the aesthetic of that show was something I wanted to paint. So I chose the armoire with the clothes hanging in it. And this was swatching the new configuration for my palette at the time. And this is that same, again, that same photo of my own watercolors made into a tab. I picked up Ultramarine Rose on this day and just did a wash in the background because I wanted to get, like, I wouldn't be able to get this quite the same way in a regular swatch. So I did a big wash so I could get the separation of the ultramarine from that paint. More crows! So many crows. And this was an attempt to paint a fox that I saw in a reference image that has some really great color changing in it, like almost blue-gray fur with orange highlights. Didn't turn out quite like I wanted. This paper I'm using is super cheap, but it holds up really well to watercolors and lets me do most of the techniques that I like doing. This was just an incredibly wet page, and I just didn't quite put all the work into it that I could have. So up in here, yeah, on this page where we began, this was a FaceTime conversation with my husband. This is where I start using a label maker. This is the Motex label maker with the lowercase wheel on. And the label tape that I'm using is clear, and it is from the We Are Memory Keepers selection that Hobby Lobby sells. In their neutrals label tape packages that they sell separately, they do have clear label tape. So FYI, that is out there. You don't have to order it off of Amazon, though you can. Also, this is the day that I got my Delphonics yellow pouch. I know I said in a previous video I had no plans to buy a yellow pouch when I already had the blue one, but it was in a resale group, it was super cheap, and it was time. So I've got one now, and it's so pretty. And this is, again, that same building. I pass this building every day picking up my kid from school, and I just really like it. There's that label maker and the new 4-color pen that I picked up the same day. This is one of my favorite mugs. It's a San Francisco mug. A friend of mine got it for me years and years ago, and it's been an inside joke with us. So here is where I started combining those tabs with the label maker, and this is a combination that I really love. The white label maker popping off of that colorful background just draws the eye, and it looks so cool. So I really like that combination. This was at a restaurant I went to, and these are some of my favorite supplies. This was me cutting down my A5 transparent traveler's notebook to make a standard size to hold all of my blank inserts for the next 6 months. So I have pre-made those. Unlike January, for February and the foreseeable future, I'm using Crane's cotton paper. It's literally resume paper, but it is 100% cotton, and it also holds up really well to watercolor and doesn't wrinkle much and allows me to do most of my favorite techniques. When in doubt, paint a crystal. Had some wine that night. Made a new sketchbook that day. Tip-in falling out, not cool. So when I went to do my journaling for this particular day, my faucet was dripping. So that's what I painted. Painted a faucet. If you ever feel like your journaling doesn't match up to standards that you have set for yourself, always remember you can totally just paint a faucet. Or one of those dancing tube guys outside of a grocery store because it's bright and colorful and you like it. Anything goes. So on this day I ran out of vellum and I didn't feel like getting up to get more. So I just did it directly, put my date directly on the page, put my photo directly on the page, and put my writing directly on the page, which I hadn't done in a really, really long time. And it drove home how much I vastly prefer the feel of vellum under my fountain pen and how much I like using these tabs. So not planning to do that ever again unless I just run out of vellum again on a particular day. This was a tin I picked up. And this was the sunset that day. And another little succulent that I bought at the store. Starting slowly to become a low maintenance plant mom. We'll see how it goes. This was the snowman that my daughter and my husband made. There was not much snow. They still did a really good job. And I went indigo dyeing on the last day of the month. There was a workshop in a local shop and it was super cool and I got some amazing pieces out of it. So that is my month of January. I am close to halfway done with February now, and I will be back at the end of the month to show you that. And of course before then with more videos in the meantime. Thanks so much for watching.